Hey, everybody, welcome back to another amazing session. And I'm with Dr. Dan Sullivan, who is a proud girl dad, father of three girls, and married to his best friend, Amanda. He's a passionate chiropractor, international speaker, best-selling author, and fired up to teach you how to sell like Jesus. That's going to be our topic today. Dan, welcome aboard.
Great to be here, Ray. Yeah, we're excited. Let's teach him a few things.
I'm ready to learn myself. So let's just start. Give everybody a kind of a 30,000 foot view of where you started, how you got to where you are, where you were now teaching people to sell like Jesus.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a bold statement, even when you say that. It's not like Jesus, man. Like, well, I got a lot to live up to here. Oh, come on now. So how I got here? So I'm a chiropractor. If you were going to get in one of the toughest industries with the lowest level of trust, outside of used car salesmen and attorneys, I picked the right profession, right, to learn how to turn skeptics into believers when the odds are stacked a little bit against you, and you kind of have negative brand equity in the marketplace. Um, so I grew up, I'm a middle child of eight kids, believe it or not. And so my mom was a nurse. I ended up getting injured in high school doing an event called pole vaulting and track and field. I went to all the doctors, nobody get me better, big research centers, big, best doctors that money could buy. And then lo and behold, our family dentist said, you should try a chiropractor. We go to this guy. He was this kind of small little office in the south side of town. I'm like, there's no way this guy, when nobody else could do anything, that this guy's going to do something. But sure enough, he got me well, and he said the famous five words: "You should be a chiropractor." And hit me at the right time, at the right place, and I set my kind of trajectory there. And I came up. So I went to chiropractic college, thinking I'm going to help athletes with back pain, like I was injured with, and I learned there was so much more than what I was thinking. So then I had to learn, like, I knew, okay, I've got this amazing, new gift to take to the world, but in order to actually take to the world, I realized I had to learn how to communicate. And so, being a middle child, introverted, very scared to speak in front of people, very scared, it's shy, don't want to disappoint, truly don't want to interrupt people or intervene in people's lives. I That doesn't go well when you have to sell. So I knew I was going to start my own business. So I got a lot of coaching and mentoring. And what I realized, I was able to come out and build one of the biggest practices in a short period of time in the state of Nebraska at the time. And looking back, I learned how, as an introvert, what it required. It didn't require to have some sort of super charismatic, extroverted, gifts. It was a willingness and a conviction, and then some strategies that I learned throughout my years. And even this, I'll tell you this, Ray, I had a paper route growing up. I never made any money on it, even though I did a great service, because I was afraid to go to front doors and ask for money. So I know what it's like to hate to ask for money. I know what it's like to sound salesy and pushy and scripted. And so what I have developed is this system and framework. And ultimately, when I look at the best salesperson of all, I believe it is the man who was God himself and walked the earth, named Jesus.
Okay, so I'm going to make a couple comments here. One is I was a track guy. Pole vault's the only event I wouldn't even try, even screwing
Mm.
around after practice, whatever. I did an octonary, I do high jump, long jump, all that. I was a 800-meter guy, but pole vault, you know,
Mhm.
but now I'm assuming somehow you fell backwards on your back, which was what I was always afraid of.
Yeah, and actually it wasn't. It was when you take off in pole vault,
Mhm.
you're sprinting with a big pole, and then you have to plant that pole. When you plant that pole, there's such a jerk that occurs, and that's where I injured
Oh,
it, not knowing, because it wasn't one single event that was traumatic. So yeah, it unfortunately cut that my pole vaulting career, because I was a big baseball player and football player, and I didn't want to ruin those sports. So I actually stopped pole vaulting after that. But I was able to go on and play, college baseball, and sports was my life, and that was part of what was so disappointed. There's no way I'm not going to figure this out. So yeah, I appreciate you taking note of that. It was so
the other
important.
thing that's interesting is I had a paper out too. I lived on a 1 mile cul-de-sac, and the collecting, I didn't mind getting the papers, go deliver them, but it's like Saturdays you got to go collect. I hated that. And
I
of
did
course, if you
too.
if you skipped it, Now you had to go and collect double next week, and it felt even worse, right? I mean, it just
Ray,
kept.
you're speaking my language, brother. That's the thing is like, and somebody who already kind of, and then there's dogs and there's like, like all these things that you have to worry about. And then you kind of feel guilty. And then I'm thinking to myself, like when I learned sales, here's one of the things I realized. If you can feel good about the work that you did, I mean, here we are, we get up in the morning every day, 7 days a week. They're heavier on Sundays. And I did a good service, rain or shine. I'm in Nebraska, so we had snow, we had sleet, we had rain. And it's like I knew I did a good service, but the fact that I was so incapable because of my own fear of rejection to go and ask people for money, saying, "Hey, like I gave you that, like I'm asking for $7.50." It's like so. I realized early on I didn't have the gift of gab, and I actually when one of the I took an extra English class in college so that I could avoid taking a speech class. Now I've spoken on stages all over the world. It's one of my most famous, my most favorite things to do. I'm telling you that nobody comes out of the womb being a great communicator or a great salesman or having supernatural courage to go do this thing. And I'm telling you, if you can relate, if you don't like asking for money, if you feel like you don't always have the best words to say when you're describing the value of your offer, your service, your product, you're not alone. It can be fixed and it can be fixed quickly. And that's what I get excited about.
Let's dive into that a little. By the way, I mean, I don't know if you had a Mr. Jacobson on your round, but that was the guy who was always mean to me. And he would
Yeah.
call, if the paper wasn't there and Sunday morning on time, he'd call, get one up here. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't, that's the guy I don't definitely don't. That's part of the reason I don't want to collect. Anyway, but if people are watching this, they're saying, there's no, and this happens to me too. There's no way Dan is an introvert, right? I mean, there's seeing how charismatic you are and so forth. What's kind of was there any particular stepping stone you made to, to become who you are right now? Because we're seeing this, and I
Well,
know people, they say it to me too, and I'll get in front of it. I'll get in a live group and I'll be like, I don't feel like talking to anybody. And they're like, oh, you're outgoing. It's like I am around the right people, around, people that already know my sense of humor, but they see you on camera and they're like, I
yeah.
don't believe you. You were an
Yeah.
introvert.
It's a great question, Ray. It's a great pickup there. First off, like introverts, it's where you get your energy from. If you study what the difference between introverts and extroverts is, I would consider myself now an omnivert. Like I know when I need to be an extrovert but I'm more inclined to want to be an introvert. Like I would rather watch a movie by myself or with my wife than be in a big party. I'd rather be in a conversation deeply over in the corner than, be around a ton of people and have to go mingle in service level conversation. So here's the thing about, here's what happened to me, and I wrote about this in a book that I'm writing right now. Is this idea of answering the call? I was an introvert because I realized I didn't have as much to talk about, and I felt so fearful of rejection. But when I had something that I knew, see, I care about people, and I would argue everybody that listen to this, you care about people. The question is, what do you have to tell them? The minute you get tapped with something that you know, that they should know rather, and that what they will know based on how you can explain it to them will transform their life. That's to me what turned me an extroverted when I needed to be. So this is I answered the call. I will say that I've dealt with enough people and clients and prospects where some people inside of them that kind of are trying to fake it till they make it. Like I think I have something, but if you know you have, and this is who I'm for, by the way, it's like, why am I teaching sales? Is because I want everybody to know it's really communication. Sales is just communication. Now, here's the other thing. Sales is a good thing because sales is a God thing. Proverbs 11:26 says, he who sells the grain, there's a blessing on him. He who hoards it, there's a curse on him. Why I say it is my worldview. I always have to go back. Is this good thing? Is selling a good thing? Well, according to God's economy, it is. And so, what is selling? It's ability to communicate the value of something so that somebody wants to buy it or wants to partake in it. And so knowing that selling makes the world go round, it doesn't have to be ethical, unethical or sleazy. It doesn't have to be scripted. So for me as an introvert, I had to find what are the ways that I could do it that would allow me to have a consistent approach that got results, and more importantly, that I could feel good about. So all that came back to my as an introvert, I was very turned away by people who make you be somebody you're not. And I'm here to tell you, like, that's the beauty. And here's, I'll jump into it for a second here, especially Christians. If you're a Christian, if you're a believer, then here's what I want you to ask yourself. Think about, I mean, there's a lot of salespeople that are out there that are great, but I'm in a stage 2 of my life where I don't, in 200 years from now, nobody's going to know my name. Even my family lineage probably will not know my name. I want to teach things that will be, that will last. And so when I think about principles of communication, what principles of communication are we going to know? The Wolf on Wall Street or Grant Cardone or Tony Robbins, like their methods may be great for the time and they help us. For me, I look at what are the ancient principles that will live on. And if you look at the guy who created the brain, you know, the God of the universe who created the brain, then became man and then deployed strategies that got skeptics with his words and his communication to become believers in the hardest time against the current status quo. That method would then be the best method. He created the brain. It's like if you got to, you know, Henry Ford created the car. If in 1910 you were wondering how to make a car its most useful and its most effective and longevity out of it, you would then ask the creator of it, hey, Henry, how do you make this thing last a long time and make it be efficient, right? So you think about who created the brain. Decisions are made by the brain in a certain area called the limbic center, which we now know, and the amygdala drives it. So you don't even know that, but it's important to know so that you say this. What strategies and or words, phrases, or communication can I do that would best reach that decision-making part of the brain? And if we just study the life of Jesus, he did it. He did it all day, every day, especially for 3 years in his ministry. And so that's where, to me, looking back at that, it's like, man, it's so brilliant. And all the neuroscience is backing up what he did, you know, not surprising, is the most effective strategies.
Let's talk. So give us an example. Let's say for your business and one of the things that you discovered that helped persuade people for you to become the number one chiropractor. What were the things? I mean, obviously you had some personal experience with that, and you also said, I can't hold this back. I mean, because I'm a
Yeah.
believer in what
Yeah.
this work.
Yeah. So in July of 2000, so I opened my practice, my first practice. I've had multiple practices, but I opened my first practice in 2005. I was 3 years in, having some success, but what I found myself is I was trying to be like my mentor. So I was just trying to model and emulate everything they did, and it worked. Like there were certain, but it's exhausting. I felt like I wouldn't be able to articulate this back then. But I was exhausted. I was finding myself just depressed and feeling like I was putting on a mask every time I was going in and I felt like I was pushing people. I felt scripted. Um, but I was successful enough because I'm an athlete and I'll work and I'll just grind. But what happened, so July 2008, my dad he was going in for a triple bypass surgery. And I remember, so I drove 2 hours to my hometown from where I was practicing. I wheeled my dad in essentially with some of our siblings, and I stayed there for half the day. He never did. He was supposed to kind of be done by the time I had to go back, but he never was. And he ended up recovering and he came out of it. But that night I went back into that afternoon. I went back and saw patients, and then I had reports of findings where I was presenting, you know, care plans and recommendations to 11 people. So it's pretty big. I did a group report at the time, so I had 11 people in this, and that night was an emotional state. I was in a state of, you know, just watching my dad and experiencing my dad, and I was like, and I just scrapped my script. I stopped trying to be like somebody else and I just laid out my story, who I am, why I'm here, and then ultimately my story with chiropractic and natural health and why I believe it's important and why they need to take care of their own health and full responsibility and I was emotional, so that was part of it. But the other part, I just told my story. And something fascinating happened that night, Ray. I closed 10 out of 11, converted 10 out of 11 people. We collected $30,000 that one night. That was more than I'd ever have in a full week. And it just hit me that I'm worthy. Like my story is worthy enough of being told, and the way I was telling it, people respond. And so if you look at even if you look at Jesus' life, the 3 years that he was, you know, in his ministry, 35% of the Gospels are Jesus telling stories, parables, short stories, metaphors, and analogies. 35%. So I think for the listener on there, if you're not, you want to take an inventory, right, of your own methods, your own communication. If you are not utilizing the technology that we call a story, you are leaving so much money on the table through the power of trust. And a book that I wrote a few years back is called The Trust Formula. It's all about storytelling. So the first thing that I would think that as far as a tactic goes is that you have to be able to use the power of story. Why you asked me that question, Ray? It's not coincidence and or irony that I went into a story about my own journey. Why? Because I know a story lands when you get off this summit. When you stop, if you say, "Hey, what did you learn from Ray's interview with Dr. Dan?" You would say, "You're not going to remember the facts, the data, and logic. You're going to remember the stories I told." So you have to get better now. And some of you may say, well, I'm just not a good storyteller. Like I was never, the idea, if you would have asked me at 10, 12, 20 years old that I'd be a good storyteller or was going to need to be, I would have said, I'm out. I'm not even going to get into an industry. I think that I need to be a storyteller. And so just along with the introvert conversation, like I wouldn't still to this day consider myself a good storyteller, but I have established some frameworks that I have used to be able to tell stories in the most effective way. And by the way, like that's something that I want to give to everybody, that I've got a very special, if you're one of those for like, I don't know if I'm telling stories the right way, I've got a very special formula that I've taken that it's simplified a 17-step that the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell created back in the day that every movie is based on. And I took it into 4 steps because I barely passed like organic chemistry and some things that were very hard. So I'm not the smartest guy. So I want it very simple. So I created a formula called the impact story formula that even if you consider yourself a bad storyteller or not a great storyteller, there's easy ways you can plug and play and it'll come out of you.
What's interesting is, first of all, this is for everybody watching. I mean, this is the first time Dr. Dan and I have met, and you just telling your story, and I immediately connected on two things, right? Track, paper route. And then I share mine, and we're like reciprocal connection, felt like anyway. And that's the power of it. The other thing is you're talking about obviously story, and also there's a lot of just this core beliefs, right? And I'm no expert, but I can tell you that this year I opted to, first time ever, read the Bible in a year. So I got one of those books that's like, hey,
Wow.
read this one and this one on January 1st. And so it switches from, you know, Adam and Eve and Noah and stuff, and then on the same day it'll switch to Jesus, right? And the stories behind Jesus, like almost every other line is like questioning is like, why don't you believe? Why are you asking me that? Why don't you believe? And I mean, these are just mental notes I'm making, and it's like what you're saying is, you know, telling the story, but also believing in yourself and what you have to share. That's what that's what spurs on the energy to flip the introvert switch, flip the what's holding you back from sharing with the world. Because for me, you know, your book is just it's not a destination, it's a doorway. And so we're trying to help people like you got the book, but you share your message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're exactly right. And actually, Ray, you're nailing some stuff here, right? Um, the first step of a good story, by the way, that I included in my formula is called the upbringing, your upbringing. I talked about right at the beginning of this call, right? The upbringing, my paper route, my pole vaulting story. Now you led into that. And I know that I'm going to hit on triggers of listeners because they're either going to relate, man, I had an injury, or I had doctors that told me that I couldn't be done or something couldn't be helped. And then I ended up down this path. And for us, it was paper route, it was pole vaulting. And I say that because you start to get good at understanding what really sinks your teeth into people's response and influence. The other thing you just mentioned, I've got a 4-step approach in terms of how Jesus would sell. The first step is this thing called mirror neurons. And essentially, I'm breaking down what that means. I'm a brain guy. I like the science because it's just reproducible. But what that simply means is where you believe in your brain, your thing, wherever you believe it is where they perceive it. So the idea, and we take all of our clients through this thing called the cost of saying no. See, what Jesus knew is the cost of saying no to Jesus was eternal life, right? You're going to spend eternity somewhere. If you don't know Jesus, we know where that's going to be. So he knew the stakes, right? And so the question in your offer, when you're trying to sell something, if you don't know the stakes, see, the thing that allowed me to actually ask people for money comfortably was I knew what the cost of saying no. I was very clear on the cost of saying no. If people don't get a problem solved, especially as it relates to their health, I knew what it was going to cost them. And the ROI on what I was going to do for them based on where they were going to end up was so extremely high. So I felt really good about making sure it was different than asking money for a paper route because I actually don't fully know the cost of saying in today's environment, maybe paper, like I don't know that I could sell papers because I would say, actually don't look at that stuff, right? But the cost of saying no, not getting problems solved is so much higher. And so that's where the first thing that you said, the stakes, and it feels, you can feel comfortable, but you have to go layers with this. And it's that conviction. So step one, conviction behind your offer and not just what you're asking for them to pay, but what it will cost them if they don't get your product offer solution. That's the first step. I mentioned storytelling, which is the fourth step. The second step, though, is the power, and I think you just mentioned this in how you're reading the Bible in a year, the power of questions. Jesus was an expert at asking questions. So I'm going to ask you a question, Ray. This is a put you on the spot. You're, becoming a Bible expert. How many questions? Well, I'm going to tell you how many questions Jesus asked, but I want to ask you a question along with that. So we know that Jesus asked 307 questions during his in the Bible. How many questions did he directly answer? What would be your guess? So he asked 307. How many do you think he directly answered?
This is a trick question. I would probably say my guess is I'm trying to think a specific one, but I would say none because he's getting them to answer the questions
You're
himself.
on you're on the right track of the idea behind why I'm asking it. He answered seven. Some people say it was three,
Okay.
but here's what actually research showed. They took studies. They studied 1 million sales calls. They took AI technology. This is done in the last 2 years, and they studied sales conversations, 1 million sales conversations. And what they found out that those who sold the most spoke 44% less. So, if you're going to say less, what would be the strategy you would use to talk less? Well, you would ask a question. Even when you look in the Old Testament, this was fascinating. Even you look in the Old Testament, God knows all, so did Jesus, but yet they still ask questions. As it turns out, the question isn't about the question asker, it's about the person being asked the questions. And when you can ask the right questions, you can get your prospects to start convincing themselves. That's what Jesus was able to do. Somebody says, Jesus, then tell me, what is my ticket to get into heaven? And he said, what? Well, what does the book of Moses say? And he says, love God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself. He goes, yep, go ahead and do that. And so you find this over and over in scripture saying Jesus was asking questions with a question. People ask him a question, he's asking them a question. Hey, what are you doing healing on a Sabbath? They're like, well, what would you guys do if one of your sheep fell in the well? What would you guys do? It's on a Sunday or a Sabbath, in their case, Saturday. What would you do? So what I'm telling you guys is if you become a masterful question asker and you become a decent storyteller, it will transform your ability to influence others.
That's really good. And so number three.
Number three, thanks for asking, dude. This is one of my favorite ones because most people don't understand this at all. And I'm okay with you never understanding this. But there's an area of the brain called the amygdala. And I won't get too geeky on you here. But what happens with this amygdala is the quarterback of the limbic area, which is the emotional center. We know the emotional centers are the decision maker. We justify with logic, but we decide on emotion. So why this is important is the amygdala is the quarterback. That means it is the one driving. Amygdala will either determine, it will go to stress response or it will go to a rest and relax response. So the third thing is your tone of voice. Now, we don't have as clear indication of Jesus' tone. I'm going to go on a limb and say it was perfect. That the tone that Jesus used was perfect. Now we know in the temple gates, right, when he was flipping tables, that he's like, you guys can't do this. So there was tone that Jesus, or when he was talking to the lady at the well, and he knew he had so much empathy for her when nobody showed her empathy. She was the unclean adulteress. So we know through scripture that Jesus had a perfect tone. Now, the question is, what tone, why does tone matter? So this amygdala, this area of the brain, it determines the intention. So with your prospects, the tone that you use is going to influence their amygdala, and it's going to make their brain feel a certain way about your intentions. If your intentions are about selling them something for your success, for your bank account, for your glory, they're going to feel that in the tone. They're going to sense that in the tone. When you change your tone, and there's 5 tones, and we teach this, but the two that you really got to do it is curiosity and the curiosity and the ability to challenge somebody, right? It's this consequential tone. So we go through tone. What I want to, I guess, remind and or teach everybody listening here is, if the first thing you could do is just be aware that your tone of voice is so influential. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And the research is so crystal clear on this, is that when you can change your tone and really just start by just being not, say monotone, people check out monotone, that's one tone. You want to know that tone matters, your voice matters. And even some research showing that, your tone of voice has a 38% influence on how they perceive the message. It's why somebody can say the exact script. You take 2 people, they say the exact same words. They get completely different results. Why? It's because of their tone. So the fastest shortcut to improving your tone goes back to conviction behind your offer. And then having empathy and being so there's a science to be able to change your tone, but I just want you to know what's at play. Number one is your mirror neurons, your conviction behind your offer, and knowing the cost of saying no. Number two is, what questions are you asking and at what time? Number three is the tone you're using when you're asking those questions. And then number four is your ability to use story, parables, short stories, and then your own signature story when communicating your offer.
It's great stuff. I got a whole page of notes here. Let's circle back. You mentioned something you're giving away. Was that
Yes,
that was the
I'm
four
giving.
steps?
There's actually two.
Okay.
You can find it at the same link that would be
Yep.
below here.
Okay.
I'm giving
Yep.
2 major things away. One is I want you guys to have a story. The storytelling formula is called the Impact Story Formula. It's a storytelling formula that I have created that makes any story, you can just plug it in and it will simplify it, and it will allow you to spit out that story in a very sequential brain-based way. The other thing is a synopsis of what I just went through with you, these 4 core things, in a deeper dive, so you can know not only what they are, but how to change them. So like, for instance, in the tone, I failed to mention this. This is just you guys can have fun with this. I'm telling you, this works. It's crazy how this works. Something like a magic trick, but it's not. It's not magic, it's science. Is that I teach something called the tone triad. If you want to do something to really fascinate, your friends, um, is that the tone triad is 3 things. Number one is slow down your cadence. When you speak, I teach this to my daughters. Slow down what you say. When you slow down, their brain interprets it differently. The second thing is use pauses, right? Use pauses. If I gave you the script to the best comedian, that your favorite comedian, and I gave you their script and you went on stage, you would blow it just like I would, because you don't know the emphasis points, you don't know the tone, and you don't know the pauses. But you do with your method, right? So the questions you're asking, the seminars, the sermons you're giving, whatever it is, slow down, use pauses. And then the third thing is, it's what I call a stutter, but it's not really a stutter. I like to call it a stutter because it makes sense to me. You're repeating words. When you're in a communication, and I were to ask you, um, I said, you know, Ray, what is so bad about that pain you have in your low back? You notice the tone, it's a little bit condescending, it's a little bit, but if I said, hey, Ray, first off, I hate that you're having this, but like, when I think about that pain, I know what I would be most concerned about. And everybody's different. I do this all day, every day. But like, when you think about the pain that you're having in your back, why is it, like, for you, like, when you think about it, why do you want to get rid of it now? Like, what is the biggest concern that you're having regarding that pain? See, what it does is it lengthens that. It almost sounds weird and kind of like I can't get out the words. And I could have said that same question. I could have asked that same question 15 times today. But can I make that question sound like it's the first time I'm asking you and I'm literally just coming up with it? Because that's a conversation. When you're in conversations with people that are real and authentic, you don't have a canned scripted response to everything because you don't know what they were going to say. If it's an authentic, genuine conversation, you're going to think about it. You're going to ponder it. You're going to ask it. You may stutter through it. You pause, you reflect. That's what question asking is so good about. So that's the part about you can implement. So all that to say, you ask a question. That's what's in. I want to give to you guys and the things that I teach, so you would have access to it.
I mean, those both very valuable, I think, for a lot of reasons. You may not be feeling like, well, I don't do one-to-one sales. It's like, what you're selling in your book, you're selling your idea, you're selling your message. There's plenty. I'll be doing it myself, downloading those. So the link is below this video, and definitely get those two great gifts from Dr. Dan.
You know what
That
else?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ray, while we're talking here, while we're talking here, I'm going to make this, I'm going to add this to the link. It just has hit me because it's such a good conversation. I'm going to add this to the link so I'll be able to upload this. I'll have my team upload it. I'm going to include my book, The Trust Formula. Um, I'm going to include that. It was a best-selling book. I'm going to include the digital version and the audio book for anybody listening at that download. So I want to sweeten the pot a little bit. The audio book, which sells for $37, and the book itself that you can get on Amazon, I'm going to give it to you for the digital book copy. That'll be at that link as well.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. It's I'm a hardback, so I'm going to get the hardback anyway because I build in my library. This is just my office library, but we've just built a whole library and it's our favorite room in the house now. And I get the hardbacks on things I'm interested in. I love this. So I love this conversation. I love that you track guy, athlete.
Yeah.
I was a track and
Guy,
soccer guy, high
let
school,
me
college.
and Ray, you seem like you've been around the block. You understand business. You understand, communication, sales. This is and I'll kind of maybe we'll wrap it up with this. But like I was thinking, I always ask clients this or prospects and seminars that I do. You may be let's just say uh, you're a real estate agent. Like you sell the best houses. Let's just hypothetically say. Um, and you do it the best, you got the best track record. You may be great at the thing you do, right? And I may ask you the question like, a scale of 1 to 10, how great are you at the thing that you do? Play with me here. Like what's your number?
I mean, I think I'm a 10 at what I do, but
Okay.
I think what
Right.
you're
So
getting
then
at is,
the
go
next
ahead.
question is, how good are you at communicating the thing that you do?
I mean, it's
Scale
funny
of
because I don't know, 6, right? I mean,
6. Okay, so
before
that's
this
better than
interview, I was sitting there restructuring my webinar saying, it's done well, but it's not, there's not the why in there. There's not the whole
yeah, so
belief
so
part and
so
the
I love it.
purpose. It's just like, hey,
And
here's
I
why
love
it's better.
Yeah, and I love that you said that. So 10, you went from let's just say you were at a 9. Okay, I can't give myself a
Yeah.
10. You're 9, you're a 6. Now here's the $1 million question, or maybe multi-million dollar. What does the public, your prospects that you're trying to reach, say even on your webinar, what what are they gauging you on? Is it your results that they haven't got yet, or is it your ability to communicate the necessity and the value of your offer? You see? So this is where it gets frustrating for guys like you and I because it's like, man, we spend so much time on our craft, on getting the thing, at doing the thing. And I'm saying, by all means, you have to do that because that gives you the conviction that you get the result. But the public and the prospects that we want to reach, they can only gauge us on our ability to communicate the value. So it's frustrating because you can't just go good at the thing. You got to get great at telling the thing and communicating the thing. Your voice is your brand. Your voice is your personality. Your voice will drive the revenue. And I will tell you this last thing, and Hormozy always talks about this, Alex, he always talks about this.
Mhm.
People buy not because they understand everything you have to offer or why you have to offer it. They buy because they feel understood. If you're going to recreate a webinar, if you can think about your fears and the frustrations of your audience, you can think about the pain points, the desires, the wants, the needs, this emotion underneath what they're really there to get, and you speak to that, that becomes the thing as to where they're going to buy, not how fancy you can, doll it up and make it up. So anyway, we could go on for days. This is a great
Yeah,
combo,
that's
buddy.
right. I mean, it's 100% right. And that's exactly it. It's funny. I mean, that's what literally was working on. It's like there's the side of here's the underlying reason people would even use my software, right? And I've till now it's done great selling it based on, hey, it's all in one place, you save money, it's very much easier to use, fully functional. It's like, but that's not why. We've got to, I work with authors. We've got to get the authors past that what you just described, to the point where because they it's like, I got the book, it's the best book. Yeah, but your ability to tell people it's why it's so good is what's struggling, and that's persuasion, marketing, all this. So uh, we'll wrap it up there because we can go on forever. But those now there's like four bonuses there. Just make sure you hit that link below and get Dr. Dan's stuff. And totally appreciate you. This was amazing. Uh, and yeah, how this is how Jesus would sell in 2025. So,
Yeah, Ray, it's
Dr.
been great. You did a great job interview questions.
Uh,
This is awesome. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Dr. Dan. Thanks, everybody. We will see you on the next session. Take care.